Speaking to us earlier this morning, he had hoped to be here live, but cabinet demands got in the way, and as we speak he and the cabinet are meeting at government buildings. But I'm glad to say we've got some more expert views with us. David Leydon joins us again. Also here is MacHale of Bank of Ireland, and on the line joining us, as a lot of people have been joining meetings over the last few months by Zoom, Audrey O'Shea of Glanbia and Niall Harty of All Real Nutrition. Thanks to all of you. David, if I can start with you, this focus on ESG, I had a thought earlier this morning and last night about, you know, that guy sitting on the bus saying, I don't know what a tracker mortgage is. You know, a lot of people who are listening to us and watching us this morning know what ESG is, but why focus in such detail on it in this report? Because you really do concentrate on it.
Yeah, the key reason, Fran, is because it's growing relevance. So initially ESG was a big thing in the asset management community and didn't really make much of an impact on the SME community. Then it filtered down into the PLCs. And now it's really beginning to filter into the SME world. So for food and agri-businesses, it's now time to take cognizance of what ESG is. It's not really just about sustainability in an environmental context, it's also about sustainability in a social context and sustainability in a governance context.
So you spoke a little bit earlier on about how SMEs are viewing it now. In your view, are they aware enough? Is there enough of an awareness there about the importance of it?
I think the term ESG probably hasn't filtered fully into the food and agribusiness SME community, but it's very much the activity that's involved in ESG is in place. So we see, you know, a lot of environmental activity. We saw in the report, you know, 87% of organisations are taking environmental actions. So that's definitely happening. So they're taking action, but it's maybe not using the terminology ESG, and that's maybe something that we want to highlight in the report, that you need to start using that terminology.
Niall, I might go to you on that. You know, as somebody running an SME in this sector, how has it played a role? How has ESG played a role for you?
Well, I suppose for us, it's gone more than just having a great product. We're very, very early stage food brand. Okay, so we're an impact-led sports nutrition brand selling here in Ireland, and we have a fantastic product. But I suppose the writing on the wall for us, and as the Minister said, we're now trying to meet consumer demands. 66% of consumers now want sustainable packaging because, you know, they see the impact it's having on the planet. And consumers are now 4 times more likely to support a purpose-led brand. I think that's what kind of put, you know, our thinking together and creating All Real Nutrition. So I said we're an impact-led natural sports nutrition brand. We manufacture natural protein bars here in Kerry. All our packaging is certified plastic free. We're the only one in the entire confectionery category that's certified plastic free. And every single bar sold removes and prevents 1 plastic bottle from entering the ocean. So for us, it's more than just having a title. It's what we live and breathe as a brand.
It's obviously a selling point for you, but it is more than just a marketing tool. Is it actually core to your business and the ethos of what you're doing?
Yes, so I'd launched a previous brand, Origin Protein Bars, a natural product, and it was doing well for us, but we really wanted to make a real impact, you know, in terms of, you know, being able to stand out more on shelf. But as us as young brand owners, we want to lead the way and show this is possible for the bigger brands to create real impact in terms of what they're doing. So we're very focused on socially doing events, getting community together, but also creating impact on the planet around us through our packaging. So like every time someone purchases one of our products, instead of a competitor product, it's 1 less piece of plastic, and also we are preventing 1 plastic bottle. So it's creating this huge impact, not both locally, but also globally.
You're making us hungry the more you wave those bars in front of us now. Audrey, to you, like that's the view of an SME. What about a big company like Glanbia? What role is it playing? I want to talk to you in a moment about kind of how SMEs should be aware of their interaction with Glanbia about it, but what role is it playing in Glanbia?
Yeah, well, certainly for us, as you might be aware, Glanbia Ireland DAC is owned 40% by Glanbia PLC and then 60% by the co-op. So it's having a huge role in terms of investor queries with respect to the PLC and with respect to the share price. But for a company such as ours, where we export more than 90% of everything that we produce to the multinationals like the Nestle's, like the Unilevers, like Diageo, it's having a huge impact. Because what it's really about is certainty, dependency, and resilience. So you spoke earlier, and the minister spoke about resilience within supply chains. The large customers want to make sure that you're able to deliver, that you're not just able to deliver on a fantastic product with fantastic quality, but that actually you're able to get there on time, but that you also have the trust, transparency behind that, and that you have all the proof points so that you can support their brands and their brand reputation.
So that's the I suppose the view of the big company, a massive company, and what you're saying around your customer base and your clients is understandable. I'm looking at it now this morning, in particular because of our audience, from the perspective of SMEs, from people who are supplying you. What is it you need from them? How is it changing that relationship? And in a way, how can it advantage them to deal with ESG in terms of how they deal with you?
Yeah. So look, it's really important. So our customers ask us to do a certain level of reporting, and that goes all the way back right onto the ground. So when I think about our 4,500 dairy suppliers, for example, and all of the agri sector and supports that they have around them, and all the SMEs and the different workspaces that they kind of move into, they all need to have full transparency and need to be aligned to the message and what we're trying to deliver. When I think about, our manufacturing sites and the supports that, our corporate governance teams want, or the manufacturing. So in terms of technology, in terms of supply chain and logistics, in terms of the packaging that we put on our products, as Niall spoke about, lab testing, audits, there's a whole industry. So anything that you think of in Irish society, that's almost kind of the wheel that a Glanbia needs as well. The cleaners that we have. So, for example, we had an audit not over a month ago, and it comes down to responsible recruitment and the certainty that we have around contractors, that we have fair business practices, labour and ethics. So it's very important that anybody we engage with, it's almost like a strategic partnership, and that we have open book, because really we now need to get really under the bonnet and see the mechanics that turn the wheels in all the organisations. And that's what our customers expect, because at the end of the day, it is about brand reputation.
Sean, what about from the banking perspective? And we see figures in the report about people looking for finance and the success rate of such. From your own perspective, how do you look at people who are coming in, either seeking funding or looking for assistance? Sure. With regard to this? So
in terms of ESG, we would see it very much as transforming the banking landscape and the general finance landscape. And I guess there's three drivers to that. The first is regulation. The regulators tell us that this is quite clearly a systemic risk. What that means in layman's terms is that it has to be put at the very centre of the banking operation, and that, and fed into our loan criteria all the way through to our own operations and that. So when we assess things, we have to put that lens on it. The second piece, of course, is what's happening at the EU level. Everyone understands the EU Green Deal, but the key component from a financing perspective is that there's a requirement for 500 billion a year out to 2030 to be funded, so we could transform the economy from a high carbon economy to a low carbon economy. And very much at the backbone of that are SMEs. So the transition will only work if SMEs are at front and centre. And of course the third component is what customers want. So obviously we heard from Niall and Audrey in that in terms of what they're seeing on the ground. We very much see the same thing. That's why when we launched our Sustainable Finance Fund, it was launched at $1 billion, now it's at 5 billion, and that's over the space of just a couple of years in that. And again, we see demand for sustainable finance, sustainable financing products, so our clients and customers can transition to the new low carbon economy and avail of the opportunities that it's bringing.
When you talk about looking at it through that lens, explain to us what you mean, because a business before, if they were buying a tractor or a truck, you kicked the tyre, you said it is what it is, there's your 40 grand and you worked out a deal. Sure. What does the lens, what does that filter look like now?
So the filter has two primary components. One is transition, so the transitional risks, and what we mean by transitional risks is things like customer behaviours. Quite clearly from the report, which is fantastic, it clearly articulates that customers want sustainable products and that's the way they're moving to. So that's a risk for business that aren't on that journey. Equally, we have the Climate Action Bill. So we'll have legislative change, we'll have the carbon budgets and that, all of which will have an impact on business. And then we have the physical risks. And the physical risks are a little bit easier to understand, but they're very simple things like, where's your postcode? Are you in a floodplain? What impact would that have on your property or your building or your farm and that? So these are the risks now that need to be assessed and will become formally part of the assessment as we move forward with the climate stress tests next year under the EBA. And of course, then the green asset ratio, which again is where the regulator wants banks to publish, and will have to publish how much of their loan book is environmentally sound, and that's going to be across the whole sector and that. So people then can quite clearly see who's funding the transition, how they're funding it, and bring that level of transparency to the process that's badly needed.
David, don't insights like this, like we're getting this morning, really, they make this very real, that in some senses it may have been aspirational, corporate social responsibility was something that was bandied about years ago. This is actually bread and butter.
Absolutely. So where ESG might have been a high finance term before, now actually you see Audrey there in Glanbia looking at an SME supplier who cleans some of their manufacturing facilities through an S lens, through a social lens. That I think that's quite a journey away from maybe what we thought ESG was a number of years ago. Sean is going to look at somebody coming in with a bank application, not purely on cash flows and and P&L and what the repayment capacity is, but also through the risk to the business. So, when you talk about ESG, you often hear, it is related to risk, so the risk to that company or that organisation in their sector. And from Niall's perspective, and I think he articulated it really well, it's a new company, but they're using ESG and that whole idea of sustainability to drive their commercial footprint, to drive market share, to drive their routes to market, and to drive, consumer behaviour. So, where ESG, high finance, not that applicable to an SME, now that has moved on completely. And that's why really we focused on ESG in this report, because we think it impacts on every part of a business, even in terms of employer branding. If you're hiring a millennial now, they want to think that your organisation is doing good, that it's making a positive impact to community. So from that perspective as well, employer branding, I think it's important.
Just thinking PLCs, SMEs, ESGs, it's alphabet spaghetti.
Acronym into this conversation as possible.
But Niall, to get to the nuts and bolts of it for you, and I think it will be interesting for people to get an insight, because it's clearly something you've bought into, it's clearly something you've invested in. Has that been difficult? Or has it been more advantageous? How do you view your journey down this road?
Well, yeah, look, it has brought a lot of difficulties, but again, with pushing through difficulties come benefits. For example, our packaging, we had to invest in a new packaging line, get material that would work properly with our product, keep it protected, but also, deliver on our sustainability criteria. But what has that meant for us now? It means that we are selling incredibly well, and it's being received incredibly well by the consumer base, because again, like we did our research and the research hasn't lied. We've seen it coming through commercially that, consumers are wanting to support products that have sustainable credentials.
Have we lost Niall there?
No, keep going.
Oh no, sorry, I thought we had dropped out. What I'm wondering is, we talked to the Minister about how SMEs could be assisted. Do you feel that there could be more assistance or should be more assistance?
Well, look, from the government's point of view, they're doing a good bit of work with the terms like Origin Green. So this is our national sustainability programme. And we're just going through that now for approval very shortly. And what that's done to us is giving us a robust supply chain, getting suppliers that are, I suppose, are doing their bit as well. And bringing this more into the team and into the local environment. So locally here, supporting events around the local community, and we often think of this stuff as, the big, change the world, but it's also about looking after ourselves internally. But yeah, look, there could be a bit more help from the government in terms of funding and finance. And I'm always going to say that because I'm a startup company and we do need funding and finance to help to grow. And, there is great offerings there from banking and, from private investments. Probably slow down a little bit now over the COVID, probably picking up a bit now. But yeah, look, we would always say the government can help a little bit more than just programs. Funding and finance is where it really helps the growth of early stage companies and helps us prosper, get to a point where we're employing more staff, growing the economy, and then get to the most important point for Ireland, getting brands that are exporting and bringing in that foreign money into Ireland and helping grow our economies.
I'm just wondering, when you talk to people like yourself who are starting out, who are in business in the locality, do you get the sense that others are tuned in or maybe aware of the kind of issues you've been dealing with?
Well, yeah, yes and no. I suppose, look, a lot of the, trendy startup brands that would be kind of the peers of mine are all looking down this lens as almost a must-have in your business to stand out from the typical, as I say, bread and butter products that we use every day. Like I said, it's one thing having a great product, but sometimes now to break through and get the accelerated growth we're looking for, just having a great product is not enough. It's having a great brand that consumers can really connect with. And like I said earlier, consumers are 4 times more likely to support brands that are mission-led and have a purpose. Like our mission is fighting against plastic. We're set to remove over 4 million plastic bottles from the ocean this year through our initiatives. And we're an early stage startup, so there's a lot that can be done that can help us on that way. But yeah, people are recognizing it 100%.
Sean, when you're looking at businesses who are coming, how big a factor is this in your mind?
To us, it's becoming key and central, or core and central, when we look at businesses, when we look at how we do business in our own operations and that. So it's at the very, very forefront of our thoughts all the time, and that's right across the entire organisation, whether it be retail banking all the way through to our corporate banking arm, and that. And as Niall mentioned there, this is being driven by customers. It's customer lens. People are voting with their pockets and that. This is what they want to do. As David mentioned, the whole staffing issue and that. If you want to attract and retain good talent, these are the questions they're asking you in the interview process and that, which is a different mindset in that. But it just shows you how focused people are on this and this whole area and that. And of course, it's the big opportunity that it's going to bring and that. The investment in energy is 1 to 2 trillion globally a year, all the way out to 2050 and that. We need to retrofit, hundreds of thousands of homes and that. It's going to create huge employment, which of course the SME sector will deliver and thrive on and that. So to us, it's very much how business is going to be done in the future. And that's already starting. We already see it coming through the numbers and that. And that's why we have a number of products out there, because it's better business. So it's not just nice, it's better business. And that's why we've reduced rates on our green loan products to business and that, because those businesses that are on that journey are more resilient, more profitable. And of course, the fundamental, or the first point of lending money, is that you want to get it back. So again, to support those businesses into the next 5, 7, 10 years as they grow on that, it's absolutely critical to our business. And that's why, we have to be front and centre in terms of supporting that transition from the high carbon economy to the low carbon economy. And that has to be SME led. And that, although, as David pointed out, and Audrey and that, it's really maybe at the corporate level we see it. But obviously, as Audrey mentioned, that's trickling its way down under scope 3 is the terminology, where you're looking at the entire supply chain. So people are assessing even the smallest player in that chain, because they need to know what their environmental footprint is, because again, that now needs to be reported upon at the PLC level. That's
what I was going to come to you next on, Audrey, the impact on the supply chain. Just talk to us, pick up on that point Sean was making there.
Okay, so for us, and look, Niall has mentioned Origin Green, and I'm delighted to be able to say that we were one of the founding members of Origin Green and are Origin Green certified. That aspect of it is so important to our customers. And under that, then we have the audit on every single farm for ESTAS. It's the Sustainable Dairy Assurance Scheme. And that's where every single farm is audited. And that stands for the supplier certification aspect. But we now need to move kind of almost away from the farms and down to the other suppliers. So the suppliers of our packaging, the suppliers of any additional ingredients that we would have. We now are kind of gone out into, for example, looking at feed and the feed that our farmers are purchasing and where that comes from and where that's made and the provenance and the responsible sourcing of that. So it goes right across the entire supply chain down into the nitty gritty. I mean, on a recent questionnaire, I was asked about the paper that we purchase for our offices and the inks and the cartridges. So it's really, when we do things like materiality analysis, where we go out and we want to have impact on the biggest hitting aspects. And for us, that would obviously be animal welfare and climate change. But when you get customer questionnaires asking, where do you buy your paper? Where do you buy your ink cartridges? Well, then that's when I have to say, okay, well, we've been dealing with the top end items, but this is actually what the customer is asking. And then I have to deliver a response to that customer. So it hits absolutely every aspect of what we do.
How far does it go, though, in terms of the climate change argument? Because we referenced it with the Minister. I mean, despite the importance of the agri-food sector to the economy and agriculture, it is constantly under scrutiny regarding emissions and everything else. How far does this go to helping address those issues from a corporate standpoint?
Yeah, from a corporate standpoint, and look, there's been an awful lot written across the summer about, you know, what we need to do and the climate change crisis that we find ourselves in at the moment. And all we have to do is look across the water at recent events in New York and the floodings and Hurricane Ida and everything. So I think the first thing is, look, Ireland is an agri-food nation, and that's what we are, and that's what we're good at. And there will be a certain nuance then with respect to our greenhouse gases in relation to that. But I think if we look at the IPCC report that recently was published, and then look at the Science-Based Target Initiative and where they now say that we need to get to, it's only sustained carbon emission reductions allow long-term climate stabilisation. And what does that mean? It means clean energy, renewable energies. It means, you know, removing fossil fuels from our country and doing everything that we can do to remove fossil fuels. And it's about waste management. So this is where, as Niall spoke of, moving away from fossil-based plastics, having a circular economy with respect to your packaging and doing more with less. So, kind of while consumers will want things, I suppose we're very fortunate that we're all in the space where we're feeding consumers, whether that's kind of absolute necessary nutrition or whether it's an indulgent treat, but people will want to buy food. And in my mind, Ireland is the best place to source that food from.
On that point, David, in your presentation earlier and in the report, and it kind of stunned me, the number of people still using cheques is quite high. And that speaks to a culture and change. And whilst many other sectors have moved way beyond cheques, and I mean, I haven't had a chequebook in a couple of years. How difficult is it to bring smaller businesses on board to convince them that these are things they need to do?
Yeah, well, there's a range. There's a range from Niall's business to maybe more traditional businesses. Again, the checkbook, farmers use a checkbook because it is handy. And farming, it's very handy.
Revolut is handy.
But Revolut is handy too. Not everyone is using Revolut yet. So we're going down that road. We do see, it's changing. This is the first year we talked about pay tech in the report because we're very conscious it's a really evolving space. We see Stripe beginning to be used. Anyone that's doing any sort of e-commerce, Stripe is generally the preferred platform at the moment. And people and finance professionals, they're getting their head around, the costs associated with Stripe versus an electronic transfer. So that is evolving. I think farmers have no problem changing. We've seen how farmers have adopted to technology. They're using technology the whole time, be it online media, be it Pasture-Based Ireland for measuring grass. The whole farmers will change and evolve, and the SME sector is evolving too. Like we see here that 87% of businesses are taking climate change action. They're doing the renewable energy, they're managing waste, they're purchasing sustainable packaging. So they are taking action. We need to keep motoring down that road, keep developing, keep driving that, so that when Nestle produce their 100-page glossy ESG report, that we can feed properly into that. Now, we're not saying in our report this year that an SME needs to do that 100-page glossy report. They don't. But what we're saying is you need to start thinking about it. Think about ESG. Think about the language that you're using around your environmental initiatives, around your social initiatives. So get on that ESG journey so that when you come in and meet Sean, you can talk Sean's language. When you're trying to be a supplier to Audrey, you can talk her language. I think that's pretty critical now.
Just the culture change is huge. You said something there, Sean, about a millennial coming in asking a job interviewee, asking the interviewer questions. To many of us, it's just totally foreign. Is that a reality of how the job market works now?
I think it's partly a reality. It's not for every role that's going, and it's not for every person. Not every person is concerned with the environment in every role, but there's definitely a leading edge there which is very, very concerned, and graduates. Look, my experience of graduates is super, absolutely top operators. There'll be talk about graduates that young people today are X, Y, and Z. I don't buy it at all. They're super youngsters. They're super people, but they do care that you're involved in a decent mission, that you're doing the right thing. Niall talks about his mission, like, is to reduce plastic in the world. From an Ifac perspective, we are a cooperative working for our clients, working for farmers and food and agribusinesses. That works for people because there is an ESG lens there. So I think it is important, and I think there's certainly a cohort of really good graduates that are thinking about that.
And I think it's really important because it shows that they're innovative, that they want to be cutting edge, and that they want to obviously help change, and that they're not coming in to do the same job for 20 years in that. And that's one of the attributes that you look for in an employee, in that have the flexibility, do they have the drive and the ambition in that? And to us that very much speaks to that. So when we hear those questions, they're the kind of candidates that we'd like to hear from, and that's what we hear across the board from the other banks operating here in Ireland.
Audrey, I just want to ask you something on that. One of the stats in the report is 67% of businesses found it difficult recruiting people. Is it an issue in the sector and for yourselves, finding people?
Yeah, so for us, look, we've grown over the last couple of years. We've been very lucky to kind of increase our employee workforce, but absolutely attracting talent and attracting the right kind of talent, can prove difficult. But look, and just say what the other panelists have said with respect to, being asked the questions. People coming in now are looking at the culture and behaviour of the company. They want to ensure that the values are aligned with their own values. Diversity, inclusion and belonging is a huge theme now coming through all of the organisations. And while many of the SMEs that we deal with are actually family-based SMEs, and a lot of the agri-businesses that we deal with are very much family-based, there is a sense of community, a sense of belonging and a sense of purpose, because at the end of the day, I think millennials in particular, but I think for all of us in the workforce, we want to make a positive contribution and to ensure that our roles matter. So it's a huge aspect today in terms of performance and looking at the reputation of the company and how you can, perform for that company, but also get the feel-good factor in terms of you've done a really good day's work and you've made a really positive contribution to society.
I can see you nodding to some of that now. As you build a smaller business and you hope to grow it and you hope to employ more people, do you see those as important, I suppose, foundation stones for you?
Absolutely. I mean, culture is one of the first things that myself and my co-founder looked at, and it was just two of us sitting here in this office before we hired anybody. We wanted to create this place to be a really good place to work, where people actually feel like they're making a difference. They're not just selling a food product, they're doing a whole lot more than that. And like, you know, we're employing people from manufacturing, sales, marketing, finance, from all different disciplines, because we produce all the way to being a consumer facing brand. So we're really trying to create, you know, a good atmosphere and a culture as we grow to beyond 10 employees to 50, 100 and so on. As we start to become a big brand, we want to attract good talent, and talent who fits in with our values and wants to make a change, as well as, you know, grow their career and create stabilities for their own families.
So for somebody who might be watching today, Niall, and they're either starting out or they're in business already and they want to factor some of these things in, what advice would you give them?
I would say look at what aligns with your own values, because, you know, bolting something on is never really going to work unless it comes from the top down. And this, you know, the whole idea of plastic is something myself and my co-founder Ross are very passionate about. And it's something that we've built in, you know, even from, you know, hiring our staff, our standard manufacturing staff are paid the living wage at minimum, because we feel that that is the right thing to do to create sustainable careers. If that was something we're just adding on because of that, you know, it's not something we live and breathe, and it would just fall short and you get found out very quickly. So my advice is look within yourself, see what's really part of your core values, live and breathe it, and your culture and your company will live and breathe it.
I think that's really well put by Niall. He's a great client to have, and All Real are a great client to have, and we're delighted to support them because they are making a difference, and they're a new type of startup that are really thinking about their sustainability impact, and they have a commercial lens, make no doubt about it, but sustainability is absolutely core to what they're doing, and we really respect that and how they're operating.
All right, well, the last word to you this morning, David. Thanks also to Sean, to Audrey and to Niall, and thank you to all of you for joining us this morning, and to everybody for tuning in. Thanks also to the Minister of Finance, Paschal Donegan, for speaking to us earlier. The report is on the Ifac website now. You can get lots more detail on the social media platforms over the coming days and weeks as well. Thanks for watching, and good morning.